In a cave in northern Spain, there is a shaft. It drops about 13 meters straight. Archaeologists named it Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. At the bottom, the remains of at least 28 individuals. They are around 400,000 years old, not our species, an ancestor of the Neanderthals. And here is the problem that keeps researchers arguing. There is no easy way for those bodies to get there. No river washed them in. Almost no animals fell in with them. Just people at the bottom of a hole, deep inside a cave, which leaves an uncomfortable possibility. Somebody carried them there, through the dark, on purpose. If that is right, it predates the earliest known burials by a long way. And it raises the question this whole video is about. What did people do with their dead before graves existed? Because burial is not the default. It is a technology. Someone had to invent it. And what came before is stranger than you expect. Start with the baseline. What happens if nobody does anything? In nature, a body is not a person. It is material, scavengers, insects, weather, and within weeks it is gone. Which is why the archaeological record is mostly empty. Most humans who ever lived left nothing behind at all. So when we find bones together, in one place, that is information. It means something interrupted the normal process. And here's what makes this hard. Grief is not unique to us. Elephants return to the bones of their dead and handle them. Some primate mothers carry a dead infant for days, sometimes weeks, until it is no longer recognizable. That is not a ritual. That is not letting go, which is the honest starting point. The first response to death was not a ceremony. It was refusal. So when does it become deliberate? Around 120,000 years ago, at Kafsa, in Israel, a pit dug into the cave floor. Inside it, a young person placed in a folded position, and in the hands, the antlers of a deer. That last detail is the whole thing. Digging a hole can be practical. Smell, animals, disease. Putting something in the hole is not practical at all. It means someone decided the body should be arranged, that the position mattered, that it should hold something. That is the beginning of the grave as an idea. But notice something about the timeline. Humans existed for a very long time before this. And even afterwards, burial stayed rare for tens of thousands of years. Which means burial was never the only answer. Because think about what a body actually requires. It has to go somewhere. Physically. Fairly quickly. And the ground is not always available. Frozen ground cannot be dug with wood and stone. Rock cannot be dug at all. On a high plateau, there is a different solution. The body is taken to a prepared site and left exposed. Vultures do the rest, and they do it fast. Practiced in Tibet and Mongolia into the present day. It sounds brutal, and inside that tradition it is the opposite. The body is an empty vessel. Giving it to birds is generosity. Zoroastrians used towers built for exactly this. Because to them, a corpse must not pollute earth, fire, or water. Burial is not neutral. Burial is contamination, which is worth sitting with for a second. The thing you think of as respect, someone else thinks of as harm. Then there is water. Along the Ganges, some bodies are returned to the river directly, not as disposal, as arrival. And then there is fire, which is far older than most people assume. At Lake Mungo in Australia, a body was burned, crushed, and burned again, then covered in red ochre. That is roughly 40,000 years ago. One of the earliest cremations known anywhere. Fire does something burial cannot. It finishes the process in hours instead of years. And it makes the remains portable, which matters enormously if you move. And that is the thread running through all of it. The question was never how to dispose of a body. The question is what to do about the person being gone, which is not solved by the ground. So look at what people actually built instead. In the Andes, in the Torres Strait, in ancient Egypt, entirely separate cultures spent enormous effort preserving bodies. The Chinchorro of northern Chile were doing it 7,000 years ago, around 2,000 years before the first Egyptian mummies. And their method is remarkable. The body was taken apart and rebuilt, reinforced with sticks, packed with plant fiber, coated in paste, then given a clay face mask. Some were repainted repeatedly over many years, which tells you these were not sealed away. They were kept, handled, maintained. The dead were not removed from the community. They stayed in it, in a different form, which leads to the practice that surprises people most. At Jericho and across the ancient Near East, archaeologists kept finding burials with something missing. The body was buried under the floor of the house. and later, the skull was taken back out. Not stolen. Retrieved. By the household. Then it was plastered. A face was modeled onto the bone. Shells were set into the eye sockets. Some had traces of paint. Some had modeled hair. And then it was kept in the house. On a shelf. In a niche. In the room where people slept. This went on for thousands of years. Which sounds macabre until you notice what it is. It is a portrait. Made before painting, before writing, before photographs. It is the oldest way we know of to keep a face. And here is why it is placed under the floor. This is the moment people stopped moving. A nomadic group leaves its dead behind. It has to. A settled village does not. And once you own a place, the dead become proof you own it. Our ancestors are under this floor. This is our house. Burial and property arrive at roughly the same time. Now, some caution, because this field argues constantly. Bones do not come with intentions attached. Take the most famous example. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal was found with pollen in the soil. The story became, they buried him on a bed of flowers. It is a beautiful image, and it spread everywhere. Then researchers pointed at a burrowing rodent, which stores seeds and flower heads underground. The flowers may simply have been someone else's pantry. And that is the whole difficulty of this subject. We want the dead to have been loved. So we read love into the dirt. But the honest evidence is not the flowers. It is the healed bones. The Shanidar individual had severe injuries. An arm, an eye socket, and they healed, which takes months. Months during which he could not have fed himself. Someone carried food to him. Repeatedly. That is the proof of care. Not the pollen. Care shows up in the living. Not only in the grave. So why did burial eventually win almost everywhere? Partly because it is cheap. Cremation needs a large amount of fuel, which we already know is scarce in a lot of places. Mummification needs specialists and materials. Exposure needs a specific landscape and specific birds. A hole needs a person with a stick and an afternoon. But there is a second reason, and it is the more interesting one. Burial creates an obligation. A grave is a fixed point. It stays where you put it, which means it can be visited, marked, inherited, and a place that must be visited is a place you must stay near. Once you have a cemetery, leaving costs something. So graves do not only hold the dead, they hold the living in place. And once that is true, everything else follows. Grave markers, which become monuments. Monuments, which become the first architecture built to outlast people. Passage tombs in Ireland are older than the pyramids. Some are aligned so that on one day a year, light enters, which required watching the sky for generations to get right. Astronomy, engineering, and organized labor. All of it aimed at the dead. So step back and look at the shape of this. Every method we have looked at solves the same problem. A person was here. The person is not here. And the body is still here, which makes it unbearable. Because a body is a contradiction. It is the exact shape of someone who is gone. Every culture had to answer that, and they answered differently. Give it to the sky. Give it to the river. Give it to fire. Rebuild it. Keep the face. Put it under the floor. Carry it until you are ready. None of these are primitive versions of what we do. They are complete answers to a question that has no answer. And that is worth noticing about our own version. A coffin, a box, a depth, a stone with a name and 2 dates. That is not nature. That is a design decision. Inherited from people who solved this before you were born. And notice the one thing every method shares. Somebody had to handle it. Someone had to lift the body, carry it down the cave passage, up to the platform, gather the wood, mix the plaster, dig. And that person was not doing it for the dead. The dead have no requirements. Everything we have ever done with a body was done for the ones still standing there. To give them something to do with their hands. Something with a beginning and an end. Because grief has neither. A funeral does not fix anything. It gives an unbearable stretch of time a shape. A day when something is done. A point after which you can go home. That is the invention. Not the hole in the ground. 400,000 years ago, someone in Spain carried a body through a cave in total darkness. We do not know what they believed. We do not know if they had words for any of it. We only know they did not leave the body where it fell, which is a very small thing to know about someone, and it is also the only thing you need. Whoever they were, they did not want to walk away.